I have here in my shop two Mercedes-Benz of the late 1990s and early 2000s era. This is a 1999 R129 SL500 convertible, and here you see a 2000 W210 E430. Now you're looking at these cars and you're probably seeing a few things that are similar, okay? Now I'm going to let you guess, what do these two cars have in common? You're looking. Hey Kent, it's the AMG wheels. Look at that, AMG. No, it's not the AMG wheels. Oh, it's got to be the color. Look at that, we got a silver car here and we got a silver car here. No, it's not the color either. In fact, it's 16 things that are the same in these two cars. Let me take you up front and explain. This is the V8 engine in the silver sedan. This is the M113 Mercedes designated V8. This has become my favorite gasoline Mercedes engine. There's a number of reasons for that. I'm not going to go over all of them in this video, but one of the things I really like about these engines is how smoothly they run, and how smoothly they run for thousands and thousands of miles. I mean, this car has 167,000 miles on it. It has absolutely no oil leaks. There's not a spot of oil on the engine or under the car, and it still runs as smooth as a brand new one. It's just good throttle response, smooth right up to 100 miles an hour. And the SL convertible over there has the same engine. Now, it's a 5.0 liter and this is a 4.3 liter, so there's a little difference in displacement, but basically it is the same engine and the same designation. And there's one thing on these engines that make them run so well for so long, and that is the 16 things I'm talking about, and those are the spark plugs. That's right, there are 16 spark plugs, 8 on each side here in these M113 engines. And people say, oh, that's a lot of work. Oh, that's a lot of money. Oh, that's, maybe that's one of the reasons these run so well for so long. When I was a pilot flying a Cessna 206, those cylinders had 2 spark plugs in each cylinder. And you could really tell the difference in how well the engine ran when you did a magneto test and just shut off one bank of spark plugs. The engine actually dropped 75 to 100 RPM. So a lot of this drivability, smoothness, and fuel economy comes from the fact that these do indeed have 16 spark plugs. And here's what an M113 engine looks like in the later year production of the R129. This is the SL500 convertible. You can see I'm in the process of changing the plugs. And granted, it's more work than some engines. Believe it or not, I've actually worked on some V8 engines that are more difficult to change the plugs because of access. Now, granted, some of the models are a little more difficult to get to. This particular engine is one of the easier ones to change the spark plugs in. And you can see I've pulled the coils off and I've pulled the spark plug wires so I can get easy access to the spark plugs, two on each side. This SL has 114,000 miles on it, and after pulling the plugs out, I think these are probably the original plugs that were installed at the factory. You can see how dirty the threads are. That's years of accumulation of carbon and unburnt fuels getting up in the threads there. Some of these plugs were really stiff to get out, but just look how clean burning this engine is. You see no signs of oil burning. You look at the tips of these plugs, and that is really almost an ideal burn for an engine with this kind of mileage and this kind of age on the plugs. Now, I see this so much. I mean, come on. All these M112 V6s and M113 V8s, I get them in here. None of them seem to get the plugs changed. Now, I think there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, they run so well. Number 2, the cost. People say, well, I got to buy 16 spark plugs at $10 a piece, or it's going to take forever to change 16 plugs. I think the cost is one of the reasons these plugs don't get changed in these engines. And I believe that the only plug you should put in these engines is the Bosch OE plug. Okay, you're going to get people's opinions, say, oh yeah, I put these cheap plugs in here. You can do anything you want, but these Bosch OE plugs are the only ones that we sell. They're dual platinum plugs, high performance plugs. They're designed to last 80,000 miles or more. And so earlier this month, I decided to start a campaign to solve this problem of lack of spark plug changes in these 1998 to 2006 V6 and V8 Mercedes engines. I knew there were two things I was going to have to do if I was going to pull this off. One is get the cost down, where people felt like it was worth it, felt like they could afford it. Number two was come up with enough detailed instructions on how to do this job that would take away the fear, take away the unknown, and take away the problems that might occur if you dig into something like this and you have no experience. So over the past 4 days, I've been shooting an extended video changing the plugs in this M113 engine. Now remember, the M113 is just 2 more cylinders than the M112, so you're going to be 4 plugs less, and all the procedures are the same. So it applies to all those V6 and V8 engines. And this video's turned out to be, I think, approaching 40 minutes long, and where I go into issues like, what do you do with a spark plug that's stuck? How are you going to get that plug out without damaging the threads? What about torque settings? All the proper torque settings when you're dealing with how to make sure you don't make a mistake and cross over the wires. What about installing the new plugs? How do you make it so they're going to be easy to remove in the future? Because a lot of these are really hard to get off. Not only the spark plugs are hard to get off, but the boots are hard to get off. And I'm going to explain in this video how you can do this so, 60,000 miles from now, your spark plug wire boots are going to come right off with ease and the plugs are going to roll right out. Not like they came out of this one. Wait until you see the video that I did on some of the problems I ran into in the plugs in this car that has 114,000 miles on it. So I think I've solved the problem of information and instruction, because that will be included with my kit, that long video. And as far as price, we went to our suppliers and said, hey, we need to get these dual platinum Bosch plugs for a good price so we can pass them on to our customers. So we negotiated. We said, what if we buy them by the hundreds? What kind of price can you give us on these plugs? And I'm proud to say that we're going to be able to sell the plugs for as cheap as anybody in the United States. Now the cost of the kit's going to be a little bit more than what you're going to pay for 16 spark plugs from some other company. But they're not going to give you all these extra supplies, all this extra information that you need, and they're not going to give you an extended detailed video instruction when you buy spark plugs from somebody else. So that's my campaign. I'm actually going to send out a newsletter. I'm going to alert people, come on. And if you've been into these old Mercedes and you're a little concerned about, getting into one of these newer ones, I highly recommend that you look into one of the models, starting in the late 90s to the mid 2000s, that have the M113 V8 engine. And so as a side note to those of you watching who really haven't worked a lot on cars, hey, come on, it's not rocket science. You can do this. With the instructions that I give you, with the recommendations for the tools that you need, you can change the plugs yourself and save hundreds of dollars.